Plaid Cymru have said they'll build a green skills construction college for green energy. But how are their science policies distinctive? Here's Plaid MP and science spokesperson Hywel Williams.
Well, historically, my party has always been very much interested in education and science and the humanities for that matter. We're irrevocably green as well, so we have had green policies before people thought of them as being green, which essentially then are science-based. For myself as an MP, I have been a member of the Science and Technology Committee of the House of Commons as well, just following some of my own interests. But we would look, for example, for science-based answers to questions about sustainability, about production of energy, about agriculture. We were interested in questions such as small is beautiful in the 70s, where we had people advising us on those sorts of questions at that time.
On your very first point there on education, is there something that you see as going wrong in the way that we're educating people about science or making them, how we're approaching this issue of making them feel that science really matters in the process of education? Are there changes you would make?
Well, it's difficult to know where to start almost. You know, science is very gendered in one sense as well. It's seen as being toys for the boys, and that girlies go off and do something else. Whereas clearly, you know, that so many of our best scientists are women and have so much to contribute. But, you know, if you look at how science is taught, again, perhaps it's taught in a non-popular, in a technical sort of way that doesn't engage with young people.
How would things look different if you were in power?
Well, can I say in general first, I think, you know, that science is a good thing of itself. You know, I think that many subjects, including science, are then seen only in instrumental sorts of ways. What good are they for the economy? And clearly, developing science, teaching, research and application is good for the economy. But I think, you know, the fundamental pursuit of knowledge is a good thing in of itself. And we want to see young people enthused of that idea. Now, I think we have some very good science teachers who do that very well, and in Wales do it through the medium of Welsh and English, by the way. But I'm sure a good deal more could be done, perhaps by weaving scientific inquiry into other forms of teaching as well as discrete science teaching of itself. And also, I think, as I said... Can you
tell me a little bit about what that might mean? What would that mean, say in a history lesson you'd be teaching a bit of science? How would you weave it?
I mean, if we take history as a subject, I mean, the history of science is fascinating. The development of scientific thoughts, of ways of seeing the world which are scientific-based, fact-based, and how that relates to other explanations of how the world is, whether those be philosophical or religious. And, of course, in Wales we have had some very distinguished both scientists and philosophers. You know, there's a great deal that we can draw on from our own communities.
Do you feel that perhaps sometimes people feel that they're distant from the process of science? And I wonder if you have ways that you might help people feel more engaged and more empowered, perhaps, to challenge science and scientists?
Well, you know, I think there's always the problem of science being the stuff that many white coats do somewhere else. And, you know, we would want to see people disabused of that way of seeing the world.
But how would you do that?
Well, you know, how much time have we got? But clearly, you know, science affects, for example, the work that people do from day to day. In my own constituency, the largest employer is Siemens, who build and supply blood testing machines and lab machines. Now, you can therefore see that 400 people are employed in a system, in a business which is science-based, which started in a backyard as a hive from the local university. That makes it really relevant to people's lives. It's the pay packet they have at the end of the week, and it's the university down the road which developed the science which allowed them to get that pay packet. Yeah.
Okay, just on the issue of policy making, is there a way in which you might make people feel more involved in policy making, maybe open up that process, publish some of the evidence on which policies are formulated? Is that one of the answers, do you think?
Well, possibly for my own party, our policy formation is very open indeed. We're very happy to talk to anyone, and some of the people who have advised us on policies of all sorts have been non-party members and the general public. Do
you think that there's a need for more transparency about why for the government to say why we've made this decision and why it goes against our advice, our scientific advice?
Yeah, sure. But there is a process here, after all. Scientists can advise, but eventually it's the government which has to decide. And, there is a very hot political issue here. In Wales, of course, we don't have a badger cull anymore, though we had one even when the scientific advice was in the other direction. And that led to a very hot public debate. I think that's a very good thing, in fact, because then, scientific advice is put to the test of public opinion, and public opinion is put to the test of does it match up to what the scientists are saying objectively about any particular question. So that sort of public dialogue outside the political discourse that we have here, the 5-yearly shouting match at the general election, that is very good. I think politics should be more about that, engaging with people in that sort of way.
Okay, so the British Science Association feels very strongly that science should be made more sort of part of our, more integral to our culture, if you like. Do you think it's true that science suffers from this idea that it's only the professionals that can do it? And if you agree, how would you go about helping to make that shift? If
you look at something like the mass media, science is in a silo. You have scientific programs identified as such, and they're there for the enthusiasts. I think it's more of an attitude towards science that science matters to people.
So what role is there for politicians then in making that shift? Do you think maybe they don't have a role?
Well, certainly I think so. In this place we have a Science and Technology Committee, for example. Now that has the function of scrutinising what the government does. But also, I think it has the function of reaching out, and we certainly have done that, for example, by having young people in every year to examine the committee. We sit in the front, or we used to when I was on it, sat in the front and they fired questions at us. When we've had exhibitions of posters here from various universities, the committee has taken part, and as a committee member I would turn up and engage with the young scientists who came along. I mean, there are a number of things that the committee could have done and actually does quite successfully.
Are there 3 ways that you think the public will see a difference if they are to vote for you at the election? Can you list 3 ways they'll see a difference?
Yeah. My party is in favour of devolution of power to the Cardiff Assembly, to the government in Wales. And the government in Wales has acted quite differently from the government here. For example, we have said that we want no fracking in Wales, and it looks as if that power is going to be devolved. Wales is a GM-free country, so we feel very strongly that we shouldn't have GM crops grown even on an experimental basis. Now, some people would see that as being somewhat anti-scientific, but we also value our status as a very green and organic country, particularly in terms of our agricultural produce. And thirdly, there are huge opportunities for the green production of energy if the Assembly had its own power to do so. We've heard already of plans for a tidal lagoon in Swansea, but there are very much more exciting plans, I think, for a further tidal lagoon in the north, and also for novel ways of energy production, which we would like to see developed in Wales. Essentially give us the power and we'll get on with it.